Well, moral victories, in my humble opinion, are beneath a dynasty. That's just my opinion on the matter. But there were some bright sides to a game that was otherwise marred by ridiculous officiating. Kylen Mills joins me. We're going live, folks. It's Tuesday Night Live, Locked On Warriors. To recap, again, a very frustrating loss to the Dallas Mavericks. This is Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. You can follow Kylen Mills on Twitter, on Instagram, at her name, Kylen Mills. You can follow me on Twitter at DogSurfRoadshow. We're going live. Kylen, what is your immediate reaction to the Warriors losing a very frustrating 116-113 loss to the Dallas Mavericks?
I love that you say frustrating instead of frustrating. I know a lot of people that do that, and I don't know why it just cracks me up.
Well, because I enunciate the R, or
no,
I don't?
You don't. You don't. You say it sounds like you say frustrating, and my husband says it the same way.
Is this your husband, Charlie, or Chuck?
Charlie.
Okay.
And Chuck, they both say frustrating. Anyway, so it was a frustrating loss for the Golden State Warriors because they were down and they showed a lot of fight. I mean, the way the second unit helped this team battle back in the second quarter was so impressive. And then they struggled a little bit in the third and then once again fought back in the fourth. I think the team showed the right amount of energy. They showed intensity. They didn't give up, unlike we've seen in some past road contests. And I don't think it was a terrible game. They put themselves in a position to win with the game on the line. And that's what I think makes that travel call so tough. And there were a couple of walks called in this game that I think a lot of people were questioning. That last one, when I watch it, I don't see Steph setting a pivot foot in order to get that travel called. It looked to me like he put both feet down at relatively the same time. He had not established it. I could see people wanting it either way, but regardless, I just don't think you call the travel there unless it's super obvious in that situation on Steph Curry. So that's where I'm just like, oh, it's so frustrating because to me, it definitely was not a clear-cut travel call. And like I said, the Warriors did a good job of putting up a fight and continuing to battle and putting themselves in a position to win down the stretch. One of the biggest bright spots, and I know you're going to agree with me on this, Cyrus, was the play of Jonathan Kuminga. Kuminga was outstanding, especially during that second quarter push. I mean, he single-handedly shut down Luka Doncic, as well as shutting down a number of other Mavericks players. He got like several stops in a row on his own. Kuminga's defense just looked outstanding. He has much better footwork than he had previously. He was doing a good job of just closing out, reading the game well. He adjusted on the fly. There was one time he almost got beat on a backdoor cut. He saw what was happening, processed it quickly, and was able to recover well. And he just was challenging shots without fouling and doing a good job of staying straight up. I thought Kuminga looked outstanding on defense and also in the second half as well, but it just really stood out to me during that second quarter. He also was doing a better job of staying patient on offense and giving the shots taking the shots rather that were given to him that were easy. He wasn't forcing it. He didn't look lost out there. I just think he did a good job, and he did pretty much what head coach Steve Kerr has been saying, focus on the defense and the offense will come. And to me, tonight was an exemplary version of that.
It was very frustrating. That final play. What are the refs doing? Like in what world are they living where they think a questionable travel call? Because you're right, it was not conclusive. It was such a nitpicky call. Like, what do you do? Like, do you really think the fans want this? Like, do the officials who make these calls like really think that they're somehow providing a positive impact to the game? That was absolutely atrocious. I mean, I feel like NBA officials this year are just far worse than they normally are. That's saying something. I mean, they're susceptible to criticism on such a regular basis, and it just drove me crazy. They blew that whistle over the minuscule touches from on one player to another for foul calls. We saw Jordan Poole get called for numerous travels. Some of those were really questionable, but just to end a game with a travel call, it's just absurd. Again, it's not entertaining to talk about refs. I just had to vent and get that out of my system. What do you think about that final play? I mean, the Warriors still incredibly had a chance to win. How bad is Klay Thompson kicking himself right now? Like, what do you think about that final play where Klay had a chance to win it? It didn't go in. What were your thoughts on that?
One thing I want to mention about the play prior to that, and that we were just talking about the travel call, Steph Curry should have taken it to the rim, by the way. I want to mention, I don't think it was the right decision to pull up and force a three there. He didn't need to. There were several Mavs defenders who were out of position. I think he should have taken it to the cup or tried to drive the lane and then see what happens versus pulling up for the three. So I was a little bit shocked and didn't love that decision from Steph Curry, which led to the travel call. Now,
Yeah.
moving along to the after the timeout, I thought it was a great play call by Steve Kerr. We know that Steph Curry is going to draw so many defenders, look to find or create an opening for Klay Thompson. And he got the open shot. It just didn't fall. I feel for Klay because, he's dealt with struggles down the stretch of the season. He's finally finding his groove, and he had the chance to be the hero today. Unfortunately, the three ball just didn't go, and it happens sometimes. But I did like the after the timeout from Steve Kerr, and I think in general, he does a good job of creating those plays, and this was a good one, I thought.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that the Warriors lost this game largely because they had a really slow start. They were down 17 in that first quarter. The starting five collectively just had, I mean, there were some positives there. I think Draymond Green had a good offensive game. He just had a good overall game, good defensively as well. But there were three players that stuck out to me that just really dropped the ball. Andrew Wiggins had a horrible start to the game. He started to pick it up in the second half. His defense on Luka was questionable in terms of efficiency. So Andrew Wiggins finishes 1 for 6 from beyond the arc. Jordan Poole had a decent game. I mean, along with the rest of the bench, the bench, incredibly enough, carried the Warriors tonight. I'm sure we'll get into that in just a moment. But Poole, in 27 minutes of play, was just 1 of 6 from 3, finished with just 9 points. He needs to be more productive offensively. I mean, he did have 9 assists, which is solid, but they need him for points above all. And then Klay Thompson, who missed that game winner in 31 minutes of play, also went 1 for 6 from 3. And all three went 1 for 6 from 3. And Klay as well, only 5 points, did have 7 rebounds. Anything you want to add to that? Because that seemed to be the Warriors collectively shot 11 of 43 from beyond the arc. That's only 25.6%. I know teams have nights like that sometimes, but is there anything you saw there? Anything you want to add to just the shooting woes of 3 of the team's vitally important offensive players in general?
Yeah, in the past games, I think something that's come up a lot for the Warriors is forcing shots or just not being patient on offense. And I don't think that was the case tonight. I don't think that the Warriors were taking bad shots. They just weren't shooting well from 3. And, there's no other way to put it. 25%, not great for a Warriors team that takes that 3 ball at a high clip. And you mentioned 3 players going 1 for 6. Curry going 5 for 14 is below his average. And I think that definitely hurt them. Also, Draymond Green going 0 for 3 from beyond the arc, just looking up and down. No one shot well from 3, and the Warriors offense is at its best when they are shooting the 3, at least average to above average. So that's obviously something they had to overcome. I think they did a good job of adjusting and creating points in the paint. That's one thing I want to mention. The Warriors did have 56 points in the paint and held the advantage there. And, that's what you have to do, is be able to adjust when the outside shots aren't falling. However, this game could have gone totally different had the Warriors been shooting the 3 just a little bit higher, or just at a little bit higher rate.
Yeah, and in just a moment, we're going to talk about that bench that did play amazing basketball.
Yeah,
I mean, the starters are the reason why the Warriors lost, which is not the norm. I mean, the starting 5 entering tonight had far and beyond the highest efficiency numbers in the entire NBA. The Nuggets are a distant second. And Jonathan Kuminga, as you alluded to, had just an unbelievable game. So there's a lot of positives we're going to touch on in just a moment. First, got to give some love to Turo. Again, it's one of the weird things about the pandemic was that production for computer chips in regard to car manufacturing slowed down tremendously. Like for anyone out there who has decided they want to buy a new car, want to just rent a car, you've realized it's not easy to do in this current climate. And that's where Turo can be a massive salvation. They're the world's largest car sharing marketplace. With Turo, you can book any car you want, wherever you want it, from a community of local hosts. Browse a huge selection of vehicles for just about any occasion or budget across the US, the UK, Canada, Australia. You can book a spacious SUV or minivan. You can get a classic or luxury car if you want to spice it up. You got a hot date coming up. You can find affordable economy cars if you're on a budget and just need to get from point A to point B, but you don't want to deal with Uber or Lyft. You can test drive that new electric vehicle just to see what it feels like. Many Turo hosts even deliver the car right to you, and every trip is backed by liability insurance. Terms, conditions, and exclusions apply. Forget boring rental cars and find your drive at Turo.com.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen today. After us, check out Locked On Sports Today. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow Kylen Mills on Twitter and Instagram at Kylen Mills, where you're tweeting up a storm tonight about Jonathan Kuminga, who had a fantastic game. This might have been like a career game for him. I'm just going to read the stats real quick. In 26 minutes of play, he was 6 of 8 from the field. He hit that huge three-pointer later in the game. That was his only three-point attempt. He made it. The only blemish on his record tonight was free throw shooting, where he only went 1 for 4. He grabbed 10 rebounds. This might have been his first double-double of his career. I got to look that up. He also had 2 blocks. He led the team in plus-minus at plus 21. The man was on fuego. Kylen, your thoughts on Jonathan Kuminga's potential breakout game tonight? He was amazing.
Head coach Steve Kerr actually just mentioned in postgame that this was the best performance Jonathan Kuminga has had all season. Kuminga was outstanding in isolation defense. He did a good job with his footwork, contesting shots, just getting low and keeping especially Mav star Luka Doncic in front of him. He was excellent. He didn't let Luka body him up. There were a couple times where you saw Kuminga also used his own core strength, and he's really worked on building that up as well. And I just thought he was outstanding on defense, and that's where this really was the best showing from him all season long. And then on offense, he was letting the game come to him. Someone said something interesting. I don't remember where I first heard it, but I think it was spot on, that part of Kuminga's problem and early struggles with the Warriors is that he came into this organization with a scorer's mentality. And like, he's someone who wants to just be this electric player on offense, and he wants to come in and score right away. But this is not what the Warriors team needs. They have, they have so many scorers already on this roster. They don't need him to go in and put up big numbers on offense. They need him to be an athletic defender and to shut down some of these strong players on opposing teams. And I feel like Jonathan Kuminga is finally really growing into that role of letting the offense happen, but really focusing on defense. And to me, he looks like he's come a long way. And that's something that I tweeted out, was just like, it feels like he's head and shoulders above where Jonathan Kuminga was when we saw him in a couple of those summer league games. He looked lost. I don't think he looked like he had the defensive intensity. He was slow on rotations. He didn't have necessarily good game awareness. And I think it looked totally different tonight. Like, he was good at recognizing when to be on help side defense. Like I said, he recognized when someone was making a back cut and immediately recovered and was able to get into a good defensive position and to use his body to contest shots. And to me, that's huge, because one of the question marks is whether Jonathan Kuminga can grow and learn some of those the mental aspects of the game in order to be a strong NBA player. And I think that he's proving that he's getting there. He's not there yet, but he's getting there.
Yeah, this was, and that clip you were talking about regarding Steve Kerr. Why don't we hear from him right now? NBC Sports Bay Area, thankfully, is posting some of these clips, these attributions. The ones I'm going to play after Kerr are going to be the travel call. Steph had something to say about that. Steve Kerr also had something to say about that. But let's start with Jonathan Kuminga, who had a fantastic night. And here's Steve Kerr talking about that.
Best game I've ever seen JK play, because everything he did contributed towards making an impact on winning. His defense on Luka was fantastic. He was disciplined. He stayed down. He challenged shots. I think he had a couple blocks. He stayed patient offensively. He just took the shots that were there. He knocked down a big three. JK has been fantastic. He's really coming into his own, and that's very exciting.
It is.
Best game I've ever seen JK play.
Whoa, stop playing. There we go. Agreed. It was an unbelievable performance. By the way, I'm looking at the chat, and a lot of people are like panicking over the fact the Warriors have dropped to like the 10 seed, that they're 11-11 on the year. Folks, calm down, relax. It's only 22 games in. Considering how they were 3 weeks ago or a month ago, the Warriors are fine. Okay, this was just a gritty, tough game that they should have won. Right, Kylen? I mean, are you seeing what's going on in the chat here? People are freaking
Yes.
out.
Yes, I see what's going on in the chat, but it wouldn't be Dub Nation if people didn't hit panic mode, constantly throughout the season. And I think there is a fair reason to be concerned, though, Cyrus. Like, I think there's reason to be concerned. We both discussed that at the 20 game point is where you start to really feel like you've made a fair assessment of where a team is at. And the Warriors were not good during this first portion of the season. And, there's no other way around it. That's a fact. Can they get there by the end of the season and be a contender? I think that's still possible. And I think the growth of Jonathan Kuminga has proven that. The improved play of the second unit is huge because early on in the season, the second unit is, for a majority of the time, what's been struggling. And the chemistry has been outstanding of the Warriors starting five. We just saw that in their last game, that they looked fantastic. Tonight, they may have had an off night, but the fact that the second unit stepped up to me was just really encouraging, because that's been my biggest concern of this Warriors group throughout these first set of games, is that the second unit is not there and the depth isn't there that the Warriors had last season. But I think that this was a positive, and that there could still be potential if the Warriors figure it out before the season's over and they could get out of a play-in spot and get back to a playoff spot. I think there is still time for that, although I do understand the concern.
So are you really worried about the Warriors right now? Like, are you sitting here saying that you don't think the Warriors are the favorites or one of the favorites to win the world title? Like, are you that worried? You don't think they've fixed things?
I still don't think that they've proven that they're contenders or favorites at this point. I mean, I think
Okay.
their performance through the first part of the season shows that there are some cracks in the armor when it comes to the second unit. And I don't think anyone in the second unit has put together enough of a body of work to have proven themselves to be ready to go and be playoff contenders. I think that we've seen flashes of it, but it's been inconsistent at this point. And the biggest thing is that the Warriors have to find that consistency. I still think there's plenty of time. I just don't want to predict whether that I don't want to say that I feel 100% that it's going to happen, because I do have concerns. And like I said, my main concerns are with the depth of this group and the second unit figuring it out. I still think that they've been spotty. And so for that reason, I'm just not 100% confident that the Warriors are favorites. However, with the starters, they do always seem to find a way to figure it out come the playoff time. So that's what I'm hoping happens. But I do think that it's fair that people are concerned after what we've seen from this first set of games. I'm not like panicking. I'm not saying, oh my gosh, we're going to be a play-in team. I think the Warriors will climb up the standings. Absolutely. But I still think they have a lot of things to figure out before they're really looking at running this back.
Well, I do think, I mean, I'm glad you touched on this, because this brings up a greater discussion. Yeah, I was saying 25 games. That was my mark for when I think you should properly judge the Golden State Warriors and where they are, given they gave up their entire bench, or at least the vast majority of it. Certainly all of the veterans are gone. The Warriors right now are 9th in the Western Conference. They're 4 games back of the Suns, who unfortunately won tonight. The Suns do look like the cream of the crop right now in the West. But again, it's regular season Phoenix, right? I mean, we've seen what they've not done in the postseason. And then you look at the rest of the Western Conference standings. The Denver Nuggets look legit. In fact, here, I'll share my screen for the YouTube viewers so you can kind of see what I'm seeing right now. But when I look at the Western Conference, it still remains so wide open, right? I mean, one thing that surprised me this season is the fact that no one has really taken the conference by the neck. No one has really stood out to me in terms of being superior. Whoa, in terms of what the heck is going on? Oh, there we go. Okay, so in terms of just kind of putting their foot down and claiming the conference as their own in terms of being a favorite. Like right now, if you look at the Western Conference standings, like the Warriors, for example, handily beated the LA Clippers. They lost twice to the Pelicans without playing any of their starters, so it's hard to really gauge how they are. The Portland Trailblazers, who 1 minute were the best team in the West, are now 11-9 and 6th. People are the Sacramento Kings. They're suddenly just a half game ahead of the Warriors. This Mavericks team to beat the Warriors tonight have a 500 record, just like the Warriors do. The Jazz, 1 minute, they were like the absolute best team of the whole NBA. Now they're 12-11, just a half game above the Warriors. I'm looking at the standings and I'm seeing where the Warriors were just 3 weeks ago. The Draymond Green adjustment for the bench was huge, right? In terms of him playing with the second unit. Kerr, instead of playing him usually 8 minutes in the first quarter, is now playing him 6, sometimes 4, and then saving him for, a little bit later in the game so he can play with this new bench that he has. I think Dante DiVincenzo is awesome. The Warriors are 9-5 on the year now when he plays. Good, not great. But I'm feeling good. Like, I think Kuminga's starting to come around. And I don't mind Anthony Lamb as long as he's not taking Kuminga's minutes. He had a good game tonight. Didn't have a good previous 4 games. I guess what I'm looking at is who in the West concerns you, Kylen? Like who in the West do you think is a legitimate threat to the Golden State Warriors right now?
I mean, I think the Warriors are still contenders in the Western Conference, but when you talk about the NBA Finals, like my biggest concern is that the Celtics are playing incredible
Yeah.
right now. And when you talk about being favorites to run it back, like to me, like Jason Tatum is putting himself in the MVP conversation. They're 9-1 in their last 10 games. And I think the Celtics ultimately look like they're ready to run it back to the finals and potentially win it and avenge that loss last year. And I also still like the Bucks. I will agree with you that I feel like the Western Conference is more wide open and no one has really established themselves. The Suns are playing great, but
Yeah.
they tend to collapse come the postseason. So that's one of the reasons why I feel like there is still a lot of hope. I want to see how the Warriors do next time they play the Nuggets. I think that'll be interesting to see. And then I still think that the Grizzlies could possibly be a problem for the Warriors. That's one team that I kind of have those games circled on my calendar. I'm looking forward to that Christmas Day game as well. But I feel like they've got to keep an eye on the Grizzlies because I do feel like similar to last year's postseason, what we saw would be a really tough battle between these two teams. I think some of the strengths of the Grizzlies has proven to be, problematic for the Warriors or tough, at least a challenge for the Warriors. And with another season together and another season of more experience, especially given some of the young players the Grizzlies have, I do think that they could still be a challenge at the very least. But we'll have to see. To me, like Boston looks like the scariest team in the NBA right now. But like I said, the Warriors still have plenty of time. I do think they can still figure it out. And I do think that the way the second unit played tonight and what we've seen from the Warriors just in the last stretch of games has been encouraging.
Heck yeah. Especially
I feel encouraged. I'm just saying, I don't, I still think there are a lot of question marks. I like that someone in the chat mentioned that they feel like the Warriors are one trade away from being defending champions.
Interesting.
Which I don't disagree with necessarily. Like if they added one strong piece to their bench, I feel like I'd be like, yes, that's it. I just still feel like the second unit is too unproven for me to say yes, 100%. I think they're going to run it back.
Interesting. All right. We'll talk about that in just talk about that a lot more in just a minute. First, we got to talk about LinkedIn, who is, again, they're all about helping both people looking for work. As a professor, I tell my students repeatedly, you better have a LinkedIn account if you want to find employment right out of school. And if you're a small business, it's not easy to find great hires out there, right? Oftentimes, a new potential hire can feel like a high stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to, again, faster. And that free part is amazing. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. I want to quickly play this soundbite from Stephen Curry talking about that travel call, and was absolutely atrocious. And for people in the chat asking why maybe I don't think this was a horrible loss to the Warriors. I mean, look, a loss sucks no matter how you spin it, but I don't see this as doom and gloom, affecting the overall regular season type loss. Look, the refs screwed him over. The starters sucked. It was the first time all year that they've sucked. I don't see that happening again. So I'm not freaking out about it. Plus, I saw the way the bench played, which to me was way more important. But that travel call was an absolute nightmare. And here is Steph, the person who was called for that travel, talking about that ridiculous call.
Bang bang situation. Dumb play by me to not take the layup. I got a little confused on what the time on the score was, honestly. Went for the hero shot. I didn't think it was a travel to the point where you don't let the play run out, but who am I to say?
Who are you to say? You're one of the greatest players in the history of this game. And let me block this person here. Sorry, folks. I do have that power. Block user on YouTube. Boom. They're gone. That's awesome. Oh, it still shows on the screen. Sorry about that, folks. Anyways, so that was Stephen Curry's comments on the travel. Here's it. Okay, so you talked about that Christmas Day game against the Grizzlies, right? Huge game. There's no doubt about that. But are they still? Is that troll still in there? By the way, did I block them? Okay, I think I blocked. Okay, sorry. Christmas Day, huge game, right? But there's a bigger one, and it's coming up sooner. Everyone's talking about the Celtics as being a legitimate threat. Don't disagree with that. That's legit. I think the Warriors can handle the Bucks. I weirdly don't. They don't scare me, and we can dedicate another show to that. But the Celtics are a legitimate concern. I like them, and the Grizzlies to me are the two biggest threats to the Warriors. They play each other Saturday, December 10th. This is a week and a half, folks. It's a week from Saturday, in fact. It's a nationally televised ABC game. Oh my God, the troll is back.
Yeah, you gotta block them, Cyrus.
Yeah, I do. I know. I'm working on it right now. So, but point is, December 10th is when the Warriors and the Celtics play. I believe it is at Chase Center. That to me is a massively huge game because, again, the regular season, I've echoed this repeatedly, how for a team like the Warriors, the regular season is a tune-up. It's a warm-up for the postseason. In a year like this, there's obviously extra importance because you're trying to integrate new players. You're trying to develop Jonathan Kuminga. I do think either Moody or Wiseman also needs to develop at a similar pace as Kuminga to strengthen that bench some more. And for people, by the way, who wonder, like, why are you so insistent on Moody and Wiseman? It's because when you look at them in terms of athleticism, in terms of talent, they're the best option the Warriors have. They're just raw. They're inexperienced. Wiseman, if you're watching him play in Santa Cruz right now, is dominating. Maybe dominating is not the right word, but he's playing fantastic. He's averaging a double-double. He's, on any given night, he's putting up 15 points, grabbing 10 rebounds. And that's what you need from him, right? Like that. Like if he gives you numbers similar to that for the Warriors, Wiseman still has a place here. You don't have to trade him. And at the same time, Moody is actually, I hear people calling him slow-footed now. I never once heard that critique until Steve Kerr took away his minutes. He's a fantastic three-point shooter. He actually is athletic. I really think that one of those two players needs to develop, but that'll come in time. The point is, the Warriors regular season, there's a handful of games that they actually do really focus on, right? And this December 10th game is going to be one of those. The Warriors do rise up for certain games. They understand the meaning of it. They like the message they send to the opposition in winning these games. Like the Warriors are masters at psychological warfare, and that's where Draymond Green particularly plays a huge role of importance for this club. So December 10th, Warriors Celtics, Chase Center. It is a heavyweight battle. Kylen, what do you think is going to happen that game? So it sounds like you don't think the Warriors are ready to handle the Celtics right now. Am I reading that correctly, or what do you think?
Yeah. I don't think the Warriors are consistent enough right now to handle the Celtics. The Celtics are the hottest team in the NBA. There's no question to me. It's not even close. The Warriors still aren't there yet. However, I think it does work in their favor that it's going to be played at Chase Center. And it's just been kind of crazy. The Warriors have been a Jekyll and Hyde when it comes to road games and home games. So that's my hope, is that everything clicks, because the Warriors do apparently have a major comfortability at home, and the Celtics are going to be traveling cross country. So that may work in their favor. But otherwise, like I said, I don't feel like the consistency is there specifically from the second unit to where they could take the Celtics right now. I don't think that necessarily will be the case come the postseason. Once again, I feel like the Warriors are a team that's going to figure it out, but they still do have to answer a lot of questions. I like the idea of adding one more bench player to this roster, someone who's strong and someone who's a veteran who could come in and make an impact. Or, I don't disagree with you about potentially giving the young players some more time. But to me, like, it's clear that they're still not all quite there yet. And kind of the same thing, just there's not quite the consistency there. But Jonathan Kuminga proved a lot to me tonight just with his play. I would have liked to see Moses Moody actually play in tonight's game. I don't know what you think about that, Cyrus. Someone
Yes.
actually mentioned in the chat too that especially with all the starters being cold, I think that would have been an excellent option. And Moody has the potential, I still think, to be a strong 3-and-D guy potentially. He does have a pretty nice shot. And I would have liked to see him get an opportunity in this game. As far as James Wiseman, I don't know that I would say he's been dominating in the G League games. There was the last quarter of their last game that I watched a little bit, and I was like, ooh, a little bit skeptical. But I think he's growing. I think he's growing, and that's the most important thing. And Wiseman still does have all the physical tools, which you've been saying all along. And similar to Wiseman, or similar to Kuminga in that, players that have the physical tools that just aren't refined. But I know a lot of people are questioning right now about whether Wiseman can get there. So we'll just have to see. I just right now, I'm reluctant to say that I feel 100% confident that Wiseman could be an impact player in the postseason. And that's what they need. That's what they need. And I feel like I wouldn't mind if they added one more to the roster.
I wish Moody was playing now. It's disappointing to me. You've seen what happens when you actually give them a chance, and I'm referring to Kuminga. Kuminga is showing now that if you give him the minutes, the results are going to be positive, right? I really feel strongly that Moody can follow that. I don't understand why Kerr is hesitating to play him. Another player that the Warriors keep waiting on that I think could make a positive impact, especially given what we saw with Draymond Green in the second unit, is Andre Iguodala. Andre Iguodala could, if he ever plays, who knows if we're ever going to see him. I mean, it's almost like he's just an assistant coach out there. But if he ever actually plays and can resemble in the slightest bit the old Andre Iguodala, he can give Draymond Green some rest, and he can handle that role that Draymond has now, facilitating the ball in offense. Andre Iguodala has proven he's a great ball handler. He can pass the ball effectively. He's not a great three-point shooter, but at least he makes clutch three-pointers. I always think back to what's the guy who used to be on First Take with Stephen A. Smith, who was like, "Give me Andre Iguodala," or whatever that clip was, where he picked Iguodala over Stephen Curry for if the game's on the line for shooting a three. Anyways, my point is Iguodala could help a lot. And that could give Draymond a little more rest and not as much pressure. I don't know if he's going to play, but let's say Wiseman is the player that the Warriors have to trade ultimately, right? Have you put some thought into who you trade him for? Have you looked at the open market to see what's out there? I mean, we've seen names like Podol from San Antonio, Miles Turner from Indiana. These are both PJ Washington from Charlotte, I like. If it's someone like that you can get back, I'm completely on board. I guess my question to you, Kylen, is: have you thought about it? Have you had any names that stick out to you out there? And do you think Wiseman actually will get traded? Because Lacob has shown that he loves Wiseman and he's the ultimate shot caller. So your thoughts on all that, please. Max Kellerman. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I don't know. So the Warriors have reiterated, and everything I've heard from the inside is that this front office still believes in James Wiseman. That was at the start of the season or a little bit ago that I heard that. But there wasn't any reason to believe that they were going to put him up on the trade block. I mean, given some of his setbacks and the way he's played, trying to reintegrate back into the team and played an NBA level, I could see him certainly being a trade piece for sure. I just haven't been given any indication that the Warriors are still not convinced that he could be an impact player on this team or that they're willing to accept the project. And I think someone said that in the chat that Wiseman is a project and not close to being an NBA player. I don't disagree with that. I think he's definitely a project. But how close is he to being an NBA player? How quickly can he develop? And that, that's a question I don't know the answer to. But all indications are that the Warriors, at least, like I said, earlier in the season, back closer to when the season started, didn't have any plans to trade Wiseman, and we're still fully invested in giving him more time. And more time is a common theme that both Bob Myers and Steve Kerr have reiterated in all of their press conferences. Give these young guys more time. And they're trying to tell that to fans. Fans, of course, want to call for trades right away. But, I think the Warriors are committed to being patient and trying to develop these young players because because, that's what they continue to say and to hammer home, is that they're going to give these guys more time. And that's something also that Steve Kerr mentioned while talking about, hey, Draymond and Steph said they felt like it took them a couple seasons until they were able to impact winning. I know I tweeted that out and quoting Steve Kerr, and some people responding, like rolling their eyes, like, oh, really? Steph Curry was impacting winning as soon as he entered the NBA, but still to where he felt like he was confident and really comfortable playing the NBA game, to where he was able to have a positive impact night in and night out. According to him, didn't feel like that till the third or fourth season in the NBA. So, that's something that Steve Kerr just said a week or two ago in talking about Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody, and James Wiseman. So I just don't know that I see the Warriors trading him yet. I don't know. So
Same.
those are my big thoughts on that. As far as who to add, I don't know that I've gotten that far, but I do want to know what is going on with Andre Iguodala. And that's something I've been trying to keep on top of, but like, he keeps everything so close to the vest. Steve Kerr won't say anything about him. And he's, Steve Kerr cracks jokes about how Iguodala is going to announce it on his podcast. And it'll be a surprise to all of us, including Steve Kerr, as to when he's going to come back. I actually just looked up the injury report from tonight because I was curious as to what his designation has been as of late, but it still says left hip injury management. And so I just, what does that even mean? It did say that when he the first game of the season, it was the same thing. It was left hip injury management. But what does that mean? What does that entail? Steve Kerr has indicated recently that he doesn't expect it to be anytime soon. But where is Andre Iguodala at? It just seems to be a big mystery, and the Warriors aren't very forthcoming with any information about that. So who freaking knows? But I feel like what you said, Cyrus, is true. Andre Iguodala's experience, his defensive presence, his ability to bring the ball up and facilitate, not dissimilar, I guess, to Draymond Green, would be hugely helpful in the second unit of young players that are trying to figure it out. When is he coming back, though? Like, I would love to know that, because we are now 20-something games into the season, and there's no sign of him coming back anytime soon. But when he made his announcement about returning to the Warriors, just before the season started, he said he was feeling great. He'd been in the gym all summer. He'd been working out. He'd been in the Warriors facility several times, working out, scrimmaging, whatever. So what's the issue? I want to know what's going on.
Yeah, I'm going to start calling Andre Iguodala Izal from now on. That's Ezal. That is the character from the movie Friday. My neck, my back, my neck, and my back. Because that's Andre's old. He's old. I mean, if that's what if that's why he's missing games because of his hip, that's an old man injury. He was missing games last year because of his knee, old man injury. He's just old. He's an assistant coach. I agree with a lot of people in the chat who are saying that they should use that roster spot on someone who actually is going to play. But there's also, they already have an open roster spot that they can use on someone else. Someone early in the chat asked, do I think the Warriors should go with an all-guard lineup? No, I don't agree with that. Moody is the same size as Anthony Lamb, folks. So Anthony Lamb is 6'5", I think like 220, and that's almost the exact same dimensions as Moody. I think Moody can handle bigs, or at least the bigs in the same way that Anthony Lamb can. I think Moody should play, and I don't think that means that I'm supporting an all-guard lineup. I also think James Wiseman, I don't know if I support the notion that he's like this project who may or may not ever, come into fruition as a player. His rookie year, in 21 minutes of play, he was putting up 11.5 points, 6 rebounds. His shooting efficiency, I think he was shooting 52% from the field. And his rookie year with just 3 career games as a college player. Currently in the G League right now, he's putting up 15 and 10. I think the biggest problem that Kerr has with Wiseman is trying to force his complicated system, which involves routine split actions, which is just a variation of Phil Jackson's triangle. That's not an easy offense to grasp. And Wiseman struggles with that clearly. If you simplify things for him, and again, he's showing this in Santa Cruz right now, he's not a scrub. Even though it's just a G League, he's consistently giving you 15 and 10, but more importantly, he's a 7-footer, right? He's a big boy who, if you just simplify things, we've seen what happens if you just give a little faith to these youngsters. And I'm referring to Jonathan Kuminga in this case. Play them, coach them. They need the reps to learn out there, and you see the result now with Kuminga. Do the same thing with Moody. Do the same thing with Wiseman. They just need time. Now, Wiseman, we're probably not going to see him until January, realistically, just because that's the similar model that Jordan Poole went through. He played pretty much a whole season with the Santa Cruz Warriors and then came back to Golden State, and we see the product that we see now. Still far from complete. I hope that he improves more because he still is relatively inconsistent. He needs to be a consistent 20-point per game player minimum to earn the money that he's getting and also to help this team repeat as world champion. But I do think these youngsters can help. I don't know. Oh my God, the troll is still all over the place here. I'm trying to stay on top of it, blocking this person. Anyways, anything else we need to touch on, Kylen? Anything you want to talk about that we haven't yet? I don't know. I don't think tonight's game is a bad loss, just for the record. I do want to say that this was actually again, moral victories are a stretch for a dynasty. Stephen Curry hates that term. He does not like moral victories, but that's what tonight was. The Warriors lost this game. They lost to a team, in my opinion, was hungrier in the Dallas Mavericks. This game, I think, meant more to them. They came into this game with a 4-game losing streak, and they just slightly out-hustled the Warriors. They bribed the NBA officials. And when you have that combination, you're going to win and the Warriors are going to lose. But I'm not freaking out over it, is what I'm trying to say. That's all. What do you think, Kylen? Anything else we need to talk about?
I just was looking up because I was very curious. Someone said in the chat that Anthony Lamb and Moses Moody are not the same size, but they are almost the same size. They're both 6'6". Moses Moody is 205. Anthony Lamb is 227. So that's where the real only discrepancy lies, and that Anthony Lamb is a little bit bigger and stronger. But Moses Moody also is like pretty strong looking. You know what I mean? Like he's not out there getting pushed around by any means. So I wouldn't say their games are completely incomparable. I think Anthony Lamb has just looked a little bit more comfortable and you know, someone mentioned he's made some shots, and he has, but I don't think that it's like a clear cut, wow, Anthony Lamb is blowing everybody out of the water. I think there's games where he's looked good and there's games where he's struggled.
Yeah. And Totes McGoats makes a good point too, that Moody's wingspan is big. It's long. And again, I really don't like that this image has been portrayed of me as like a Lamb hater. I don't hate Anthony Lamb. Tonight's game was actually great. I did nothing but support his output, his performance, but I just think that you have two players on this roster who should be getting minutes over him. That's all. That is all I'm trying to say, and that's alluding to Moody and Wiseman when he comes back. I honestly think the Warriors might just go this whole year without playing Wiseman. I think that's a strong possibility. I think he might just play for Santa Cruz, hopefully lead them to some sort of success in the postseason. The G League has a playoff, and then after that, he might play garbage time minutes. He might get squeezed in here and there, but with the roster. But I think he's just going to be mostly someone on the bench rooting this team. I don't know. What do you think about that? Do you agree? Don't agree? I don't know. What do you think is going to happen is what I'm asking, Kylen.
I don't hate James Wiseman staying in the G League as long as he needs to stay in the G League. I think it's great for him to continue to develop. I think the only problem is that the Warriors were expecting him to be contributor in this year's second unit. Like that's the way that this roster was built, was that Wiseman would be ready to play this season, would be ready to be impacting the team in the second unit. If he's not there, how do they replace that? And can they add a big to the roster to potentially fill that spot if Andre Iguodala never comes to fruition and never plays either? So that's my only thing is James Wiseman would be just fine staying in Santa Cruz. And I don't think it's a bad idea to give him more time there to just continue to develop and to continue to grow his confidence. But then what's the Warriors' answer in their second unit? Because they were expecting and relying on him to be ready, maybe not immediately this year coming off the injury, but at some point. And if he's not, what's the counteraction to that?
Yeah, I really wish the Warriors were not so damn rigid when it comes to there are like Dwight Howard is out there. I would not mind him. I really don't understand.
I agree.
Yeah, I don't get the aversion to that. He's a veteran with championship experience. He's hungry. He actually wants to play for the Warriors. Yeah, I don't get that part of it because I do feel like the Warriors could use him. I mean, they could use a 7-footer who's incredibly powerful. Paul Revere writes this losses on Curry. Wow, buddy. Really, Paul? That's kind of crazy, man. That's crazy talk. You don't blame Curry for anything, dude. Are you kidding me? You're mad. You're mad. I want to wish Laura Doan a happy birthday, by the way. She is one of our listeners from the United Kingdom. A big fan of the show. Happy birthday. Anything else? Are we done?
I think that's it. Totes McGoats is posting in the chat, hashtag bring back KD. That means it's time to sign off.
All right. Kevin Dana joins the show tomorrow. Again, the refs totally screwed the Warriors. There's no question about that. It was utterly ridiculous. But what are you gonna do? Yeah. So yeah, Kevin Daniel will join the show tomorrow. I'm gonna pick his brain on Wiseman because he's had a front row seat to all these games. And I'd love to get his perspective on how Wiseman is doing and whether or not we will see him this year in a role that actually contributes. Because it is crazy how this whole offseason everyone was so hyped up on James Wiseman, right? I think us included a little bit. And then all it takes is for Steve Kerr to just bench him, and then everyone turns on him in like 2 seconds. Well, what are you gonna do? Anyways, thank you, everyone. Are we good? We out?
We're good.
All right. Peace out, everyone. Thank you again. And just for everyone, and on this note, don't let this game bother you too much. The refs screwed the Warriors over. The starters played awful. It was the first time all year. It was a moral victory. Take that for what it's worth. All right, Kylen, thank you so much. No Cap is your biggest fan, by the way, just so you know. All right, bye everyone. Take care.